Back live with you tonight. The South African Federation of Trade Unions says it is disappointed by the failure of the temporary employment relief scheme application. Saftu says the scheme will only provide temporary relief, but a long-term solution is needed to stop retrenchments altogether. General Secretary of Saftu, Zwelinzima Vavi, joins us now for more. Dr. Vavi, good evening, and thank you very much for your time. You seem to have pinned your hope yourself, along with government, I suppose, on a TERS bailout. And now that this is not approved, it looks like it's the end of the road for the workers.
Well, now it looks like that very sad situation for post office, one of the worst kind we have to deal with over the past 30 years of democracy. Yeah, we only crossing the fingers that the ministers of both communication and Labour will find a way of resubmitting the application to TERS and see whether the concerns they had raised will be addressed through a new application. But for now, the withdrawal and refusal of TERS to fund means that 4,800 plus workers are at home as we speak. They have been retrenched. It means that the post office now remains only with 5,200 workers. When you look at this in its full context, you will see that we have been experiencing one of the worst disasters when it comes to a collapsing state-owned enterprise, a critical one for that matter for the marginalized majority of our people who rely on the services that post office must provide to the members of the public. We are now talking an institution that used to employ 33,000 workers at the dawn of democracy in 1994. It had over 2,700 branches or offices all over South Africa. And those numbers have been cut almost by 10, 11,000 since 1994, to such an extent by last year, 2022, there were only 16,000 plus workers left at the post office. Yeah. At the start of this disastrous process of January 2023, there were only 11,000 workers remaining. Now, when you cull a further 4,800 plus jobs, it means that you only left with the 5,200, as I said. Yeah. But at the same time, look at it in the context of the services that the post office used to provide to the marginalized members of our society. As I said, there used to be over 2,000 post offices all over the country. They are now down to 660 only that are left. With these 4,800 workers facing or being chopped and killed altogether, you can imagine that those 660 post offices all over the country will not be there in no time, as only 5,200 workers are now remaining. It's a disaster.
Yet government spends 30 to 50 billion rands on mail services. I mean, you get your utility bill, you get your traffic fines, you get some communication from SARS and so on and so forth via that particular process. Who is benefiting from this 30 to 50 billion rands?
Oh, this is the saddest story of them all. Indeed, the government spent 30 to 50 billion rands on its postal services, on moving its mail around and sending parcels around. That's 50,000 every financial year. 50 billion every financial year. What we are saying to government is just give 30% of that business back to post office. With that 30%, it will amount to about 12 billion rands. With 12 billion rands, you don't need government handouts. Government, as part of its intervention, last year said it can save post office, but it put conditions that makes our situation even worse. It puts a condition that says we will intervene on condition that post office will retrench 7,000 workers. And then it says we will give you a 2.4 billion rands, and then as a first tranche, we will give you a 3.8 billion rands as the second tranche. We're asking government to please pay that 3.8 billion. And we've written a letter to the minister today, as well as to the business practitioner, the business rescue practitioner, to say to them, let's meet, because we think that we must continue to press on government to at least give a commitment, not only to pay 3.8 billion, but to go to the need to support post office by giving it just 30% of its telecommunication business. And on that basis, you will not need to handouts at all. All we're asking for is this, that the post office provide the most critical support, the most critical service, communication to the marginalized poor who don't have data, who don't have cell phones, and who can have cell phones. And 80% the last time I checked of South Africans have cell phones. But those cell phones have no data, have no airtime, and they're good as just taking photos. And but they can't do anything beyond because of the levels of poverty, inequality in our economy. We need government support, and we're desperately making a call to the government. Please, guys, if you are serious about servicing the most marginalized members of the society, provide this 30% of your business to post office so that it can survive.
So you've got...
There's another,
yes.
There's another critical issue. One critical issue. Our union, DIPACU, believes that there have been asset stripping at the post office, and that the leadership today and the previous leadership have some serious issues that they will have to respond to. Our unions have, DIPACU in particular, have reported to the business rescue practitioner that the Pretoria branch of post office have lost 14 Superlink trailers, just disappeared, gone, no trace. And workers know that there were 14 Superlink trailers here, gone. They have reported this matter to the PRP, and they have promised a security investigation to find out what have happened to those assets. And we think that my advice to the leadership of DIPACU was, no, go to the police station, guys. And you can't just put in Superlink trailers disappearing.
Yeah.
That plays such an important role to moving all of those posts around the country, gone.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to your question, who's benefiting from just collapsing ESCOM? We know now that some of those senior managements are alleged to have already developed a relationship with the private players in the telecommunication industries, and they may be preparing the typical Javelin syndrome, where they know that those assets that they have stripped will be of better use at improving their share ownership schemes or share ownership in the private-owned companies.
Yeah.
We are worried about that. This is the matter that we believe we want to go to the bottom of with the ministers, but which should involve the police services.
So part of what was presented also to the Portfolio Committee, others argued that the post office cannot be saved. One, because the business in itself is archaic in terms of its logistics. Two, in terms even of its IT system to meet the demands of modern day postal services.
That type of a statement reminds us of the popular quote by one of the progressive philosopher thinkers in the United States of America, Noam Chomsky, who makes a statement that says, first you must defund, as a technique towards privatization. He says, defund, make sure things do not work, ensure that people get angry before you hand over the assets to the private sector as the only solution that can work. This is a typical example. Government have defunded the post office, have not provided support, have moved its own business out of post office and have defunded it, and now people are angry because as if we can, I can only show you the videos that workers are circulating amongst themselves to show that post that have left the hands of the people who thought that the parcels would have been received ages ago to the people that they have been sending this thing to is still lying in post office, even years. You will be shocked. I will send you, Mluli, after this. You will be shocked about the levels of inefficiencies. And but this have been allowed. This have been allowed. Government have simply refused to invest in the new technologies, have not trained workers to be able to use those technologies. I went to the South West Coast, south of Johannesburg, about a year ago, and I saw this thing about how post office is all over the show, and the post office was being loaded in my city buses to go from city to city. The infrastructure, the trucks, the buckets that used to be there to transport the post office are all gone, no service or parking in the yards. Totally fitting with that philosophy that says you must defund, you must make sure that people get angry, then you hand these assets over to the private sector as the only option on the table.
Now, the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, as part of this intervention, had offered to assist with finding placement positions for staff after their upskilling. Is that just a mere empty promise? Is there something that is being done about that?
They have paid 2.4 billion rands as part of that commitment, which we welcome. But they have an outstanding 3.8 billion rands that they must pay. And part of us wanting to meet with the minister is to say to him, but you made the promise, pay. We didn't like the fact that one of his conditions was that post office must lose 7,000 workers for it to be viable. And we don't think that there is lesser need of postal services in our country. And by the way, there's another aspect that you must consider. You remember one of the most painful episodes in the post office was the fact that workers discover at the point when they were taking their pensions or deciding to retire and moving around in the country, that that their years of pensions or provident funds have not been handed over to the relevant authorities. And they discovered that their medical aids have not been paid by the employer, whilst deductions are happening on their side.
Yes.
And so you can imagine now a 4,800 of them joining the others that would have left between 2019 and now. They go on retirement with about 6 years short of contribution to their pension. Literally, after having not received any salary increase for 6 years. For the past 10 years, post workers have only received salary increases 4 times, and in one of those 2, I think, they have had to go on a strike to get a salary increase annually. It's been a total disaster. And I know that Telkom Transnet, Dinel, all of them are on their knees. But there is no worse an example than the post office in terms of how the government have really ravished this institution. I was telling you at the beginning that during apartheid, there were over 2,000 postal services all over the country.
Yeah.
They are down to
only 660, you say? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a disaster.
Let's leave it there.
Why?
Yes.
Neglected because it services the poor. And the upper middle class and the high-flying elites do not need postal services anymore. But the marginalized poor will remain black. Are the ones that do need this service. It is a critical service as this one that provides communication networks amongst the most marginalized poor majority of our country.
Zwelinzima Vavi, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. The General Secretary for Saftu there on the SAPO process, South African Post Office. Now their application for TERS funding unsuccessful, which means they revert, of course, to that position where 4,889 employees of the Post Office nationally will be affected by retrenchments. Right, more news after the break. Stay with us.